remembered for the rules you break. And, I've broken some rules to make this.
The design concept and the build of Titan, they were going to do it all themselves.
Do you know why they made that decision?
Can I say arrogance?
Do you now want to let me go? That's the question.
I don't see we have a choice.
A lot of the things I've learned in the last 18 months or whatever have been very shocking.
This technology is what we need to explore the ocean depth.
When did you get fired?
June 2019. Just wouldn't let him go to the Titanic.
One of our pilots found a crack in the sub. That was not public knowledge, and they said, do not say anything to anyone.
If you ever wanted to visit the wreck of the Titanic, well, your opportunity is coming. Tourists will be able to participate in the first submersible expedition to the Titanic since 2005. The expedition departing from St. John's, Newfoundland. Tourists will be joined by a special team of experts as well. Here to talk a little bit more about how this is going to play out in Seattle is the CEO of OceanGate Expeditions, Stockton Rush. Mr. Rush, thanks for this today.
Oh, pleasure to be here.
So I know the last visit to this site here was, many, many years ago. Why has it taken so long for something like this to come about? Because as you know, there's a lot of interest even to this day in the Titanic.
Yes, I don't think many people appreciate. There are only 4 manned submersibles that can get to the depth of the Titanic. In the past, travelers would go using the Russian Mir submersibles, which have been placed in storage for the last several years. So it's very rare. More people have been to space than have been to even the depth of the Titanic.
Let me ask you about these tours. Walk us through sort of the mechanics, how they're going to work.
Yes, so sort of don't like the term tours. This is really about exploration. It's an expedition to survey the wreck, and we have a number of individuals that can come out as mission specialists to assist. So groups of 9 individuals will come out to the wreck every week. We'll be joined by nautical archaeologists and marine biologists, as well as our crew, which will already be on site, which is 380 nautical miles off of St. John's. And then there will be a number of dives, at least 3. We have slotted for more in case of weather and other problems. But the travelers who come out will participate in the dives, operate sonar and communication systems, photographs, work on data. So it's a very active experience. I
was going to say, this is not just sort of watching. They're involved to a certain extent.
Very much so. The few trips that were done in the past were much more tourist related. Come and look. This really has a mission. In some ways, be similar to what James Cameron did when he went down and filmed large sections of the wreck for the movie Titanic. Very similar to what he did is what we're going to be doing, and the individuals who come out are going to be a part of the crew.
Can I ask you about pricing? I mean, how much does this kind of thing cost someone?
Well, as you can imagine, it's very expensive to mobilize large ships in the middle of the ocean and submersibles and the like. The price is after individuals fill out an application to determine their suitability and have an interview, then the price is $105,129 per person.
Can I ask you as well, how many people will get to try this out? Will get to go on this journey?
Right now, we have filled all 54 of the 2018 expedition mission specialist slots. Our plan is to go back in 2019 and subsequently every year. There's a basic season in the North Atlantic from May through August, and take more individuals down.
How about you yourself? Are you going to be a part of this?
Oh yeah. That's the one of the benefits of being the CEO. I'm going to be. I get to do the first dives and most interesting dives.
How long? Yeah, I was curious how long you've been waiting to get a chance to see that up close and personal, that wreckage.
Well, we started building and designing the Pt.2 submersible that will take these 5 people down on every dive over 7 years ago. We identified the Titanic as sort of the key marquee dive to do next year. So I've been waiting to do that, but really I wanted to be an astronaut, and to me this is like exploring a new planet, and so I've been waiting my whole life to do that.
Great to have you on the program. Thanks for this.
Well, very good. Thank you.
As we know, those 2018 dives to the Titanic did not come to fruition, and by 2019, when the crack in Titan's hull was discovered, any trip to the famous shipwreck was well and truly off the cards. Still, despite Tony Nissen's insistence that Titan's hull was finished before his departure from the company, in October of 2019, OceanGate would take their submersible to the Deep Ocean Test Facility to conduct pressure tests to determine the state of things. After testing and assessment were completed, Titan's hull was derated to a maximum depth of 3,000 metres. In a 2020 article posted on the GeekWire website, Stockton Rush stated that cyclic fatigue had been found in Titan's hull, hence its derating to a shallower maximum dive depth. He also explained how $18.1 million of funding had been secured, entirely from inside investors, which would pave the way for dives to the Titanic in 2021. Eventually, the decision was made to manufacture a new hull for Titan, which would lead OceanGate to approaching NASA for assistance in producing and testing a third-scale model. And though an agreement was signed and materials purchased and delivered to NASA, the 2020 pandemic brought the operation to a screeching halt.
So just for the record, it looks like OceanGate signed January 30th, 2020, and NASA signed February 4th, 2020. Are you aware if NASA did any of the items outlined in those areas of responsibilities that we just looked at on page 14?
We did not. The COVID pandemic occurred and we weren't able to accomplish any of the fabrication. We provided remote consultation throughout the build of their 1/3 scale article, but we did not do any manufacturing or testing of their cylinders.
Are you aware of who built their third scale models?
I believe Electro Impact fabricated the articles.
OceanGate's plan for their new hull and the Titanic dives that were promised had become time critical, though a rush to get things completed and Titan diving would remain a constant trend throughout the next few years. In May of 2020, Electro Impact began the layup for a 1/3 scale model. However, a wrinkle was identified that was perfectly axial from top to bottom, and as a result, a decision was made to restart the manufacturing. On May 27th, a 1/3 scale model was complete, and the model hull was sent off to Composite Solutions Corporation to be bagged in a laminate cure. It was then sent to Janicki Industries to be heated and cured in their autoclave. After the cure, large wrinkles were identified in the model. In June of 2020, based on evidence received by the MBI, a second third-scale hull model was fabricated by an unknown entity. Electro Impact stated that they had only fabricated one model for OceanGate. This second 1/3 scale model also had wrinkles present, but according to an analysis by Colliers, the build quality was better than the first model due to it having fewer delaminations. In his testimony, Phil Brooks, former OceanGate's Director of Engineering, stated a second scale model test took place in August of that year. He also stated that both models tested were manufactured by Electro Impact.
Can you describe the third scale model testing?
So we did similar pressure testing for the third scale models. We built 2 of them, and I believe that the first date was July 26th in 2020, yes. And the first scale model we tested to, I think it only made it to about 2,800 meters. We had a similar profile. I don't have those tests in front of me. I didn't get them, but I know that it failed. I think it was we would normally do an AM session and a PM session. So we would do a 4-hour test profile in the morning, and then after lunch we would do another 4-hour test. And I believe it was in the PM session that we got to, and I can't remember the exact depth, but it was probably around 2,800 meters. And all of a sudden we could see the strain start to move, and we could see the AE just go nuts, and then followed by an ear-splitting bang that was, ringing in the ears, and pretty catastrophic failure. So that was the first test. The second, so we built a second third scale model, and we ran 2 tests on that. The first test did not work because we had a leak in the sealing of the end caps, and it kept leaking pressure, so we had to take it out and fix the leak. And then we went back, I believe, on August 20th of 2020, and we tested the second third scale model, and it actually did not make it to the rated depth that we wanted to. It made it to about the same depth, but it did not implode. Stockton, we would broadcast the computer screens via Zoom or Teams to Stockton's office, and so we were all watching in real time. And he had us bring down the pressure once it was very clear that it was starting to fail. So it didn't fail, but it didn't make it to the depth that we wanted it to. So we knew that we had to do something different because it wasn't working. The issue on those 2, they were not multi-cure, they were just single cure, and we did not do the same technique that we did with the full-size hull, which was, like I said, the multi-cure and the after every cure, smoothing out any bubbles or imperfections in each layer. So that's basically kind of the synopsis of the third scale testing.
Do you know who built those third scale models?
So those were built by EI and wound at EI, and then they wound the cylinder, and then the end caps were glued on at the Everett shop.
And when you said EI, are you talking about electroimpact?
Correct, electroimpact, yeah, apologies, yeah.
Where were these third scale tests conducted?
The third scale tests were done at the UW Oceanography Lab in Seattle.
And you already mentioned that these third scale models were not multi-cured. So was a third scale model ever constructed that was in the same layup or same type of manufacturing process as that of the full scale model?
No, yeah, we didn't do. We ended up not doing a multi-layer third scale hull. We went straight to the full size hull and then did multi-cure on that. So yeah.
So to confirm, there was no successful third scale model test to Titanic depth prior to going to this full scale.
That's correct. That's correct.
Though no successful scale model test was completed, during the winter of 2020, Electroimpact began the construction of the final Titan hull. Don Kramer, a National Transportation Safety Board or NTSB engineer, during his presentation of a Titan material analysis at the public hearing, shared images of and described the manufacturing and defects found from Titan's first hull to those third scale models, and then also to this new Electroimpact manufactured hull.
Investigators had the opportunity to examine a leftover piece of the Titan V1 hull. The hull was originally manufactured with excess material at both ends, and then the hull was trimmed to size. The leftover piece was trimmed excess material from one of those ends. The piece contained voids and delaminations. One notable delamination was located about mid-thickness and is shown from different directions in these 2 images as indicated by the white arrows. After OceanGate retired the V1 hull, they manufactured 2 1/3 scale test articles. Just like the Titan V1 hull, those cylinders were manufactured with extra material on both ends, and then the cylinder was trimmed to size. One of those trimmed end pieces is shown in this image, and in greater detail in these images. The trimmed end piece contained 2 notable wrinkles and a mid-thickness delamination as indicated by the arrow in the upper image. According to multiple former directors of engineering for OceanGate, both subscale test articles imploded or were on the verge of imploding at or below 2,800 meters. OceanGate identified these wrinkles as a likely cause of the low implosion pressure. In order to mitigate the wrinkle problem, OceanGate pursued a co-bonding process, which I'll describe in a couple of slides. OceanGate proceeded with building a full-scale version 2 hull for Titan. The full-scale V2 hull was manufactured by automatic fiber placement. This is a robotic system that, in this case, was probably attached to an overhead rail and trolley system and contained multiple spools of pre-preg tape loaded into a fiber placement head. The head can apply multiple tapes in multiple directions. For the first 2 plies, the tapes were applied in the circumferential direction, like a spiral from one end of the hull to the other. For the 3rd ply, the tapes were applied in the longitudinal direction. The sequence was then repeated until 133 plies, approximately 1 inch of pre-preg material, had been applied to the hull. The co-bonding process, or multi-cure process, as it was sometimes referred to by OceanGate, involved building up the composite hull in 1-inch layer increments. After the first inch of pre-preg was applied, the layer was capped by a peel ply. This peel ply was a plain woven synthetic fabric that was designed to be removed later. The assembly was then cured at elevated temperature and pressure in an autoclave. After curing, the peel ply was stripped from the surface. The act of stripping the peel ply is intended to create an active surface for adhesive bonding. After peel ply removal, bulges in the hull were removed by grinding. A layer of film adhesive was applied, followed by another inch of pre-preg, capped once again by a peel ply. The assembly was once again sent to the autoclave for curing. This process was repeated until a nominally 5-inch thick hull was produced. The image on the right shows a cross-section through a trimmed end piece of the hull. The lighter lines, spaced about an inch apart, are the layers of film adhesive used to join the carbon fiber composite layers. This image shows the rough V2 hull upon completion. The rough hull was manufactured with excess material at either end, which was subsequently trimmed off.
Did you or are you aware if any other NASA employee provide to OceanGate advice related to multi-curing of a carbon fiber structure?
We had discussed it with them as a potential option. I don't recall the exact nature of those discussions.
Can you describe the purpose for a multi-curing process of a thick carbon fiber structure?
What would happen as the material becomes thick, which I believe you guys have seen some of the images, you'll start to see wrinkling or other non-desirable features. So the thought would be you would build up a section that doesn't have those features, cure it, then come back and perform a secondary bond and continue that process till you reach your desired thickness.
So is it fair to say that the multi-curing process was to help reduce wrinkles in the final design?
I don't know the exact reason they did that would be my assumption.
Titan's new hull was tested at the Deep Ocean Test Facility, with tests rising in length from 20 to 240 minute cycles and reaching pressures from 3,840 metres to 4,200 metres. As can be seen in this image, Titan left the testing facility on March 4th on the back of a flatbed truck with no protective covering. Once Titan was back at their Everett facility, OceanGate wasted no time. With their 2021 Titanic expedition still planned to go ahead, they began performing system test dives with the new hull, though only 11 test dives were noted in Titan's dive log. The deepest of those dives was only 170 metres. Also, despite its new hull, Titan's dive numbers were continued on from those of the first hull, meaning the first dive with this new hull would be recorded as dive 50, which would serve to inflate the overall perceived dives of the vessel and also give a false sense of the safety of Titan. These shallow test dives concluded on May 25th, before OceanGate began prepping for Titanic. Despite this professional depiction of the 2021 Titanic expedition, in reality, there were some truly concerning events that occurred, beginning with the very first dive conducted, during which there was a major incident. Fred Hagen, a mission specialist who, believe it or not, would be adamant in taking part in the next scheduled dive, testified about what he witnessed on Dive 61 as Titan's front dome fell off during its ascent up the ramp of the Horizon Arctic, which was the support ship for the Titanic expedition.
Well, we attempted to launch the Titan, and we experienced some issues, and when they were pulling it back up onto the deck, I believe what happened was that it came up and the crane was pulling it up the ramp, and it got to a point where it was seesawing. There's the flat plane of the deck, and then there's the angled plane of the ramp, which is fairly steep, probably a little too steep. But again, this was all experimental, and we were feeling our way through it. So it was teetering back and forth, and then the crane operator let it go a little bit too abruptly. And it slammed down on the deck with quite a bit of force. Now, the complicating factor was that a decision had been made to only install 4 of the 18 bolts in the 3,500-pound titanium dome. And that decision was made. I was there when the decision was made. I did not articulate any opinions one way or the other. But the thought was that once the ship went, or the Titan went to depth, that the pressure would be so intense that you didn't need any bolts. You wouldn't be able to pry it off with a jack. So they were trying to minimize the time it took to get the mission specialist out of the Titan after the mission ended. And that decision was made. The problem was no one anticipated that the platform was going to be dropped with such force. And you're also in the North Atlantic, so the ship's going up and down. There's a lot of factors that combine together. The force of the platform hitting the deck of the, was that the Horizon Arctic that you're? Yeah. The Horizon Arctic, it just basically sheared off several bolts, and they shot off like bullets. And as you know, the titanium dome fell off.
Yes, thank you. Did you witness or did you notice any damage to the forward dome?
No, there was no visible damage. It was obviously a very robust structure. It was just the connecting points that severed.
This incident involving the forward dome marked a concerning end to what was already an unsuccessful first dive, with Titan only diving to 7 meters before the dive was cancelled due to a key technical failure related to the submersible's ability to use echo sounding to determine velocity, direction, and distance from the seabed.
We've heard through testimony that the forward dome got knocked off of the Titan and fell onto the ramp. In your experience, had a sub been classed, what would have been required if something like this happened to one of your subs prior to diving?
Well, first of all, it would have been an all-stop, and there would have to have been a report issued to the certification agencies to explain what had happened and to find out what had been the cause and what was done to ensure that it didn't happen again. But the idea of the front dome falling off is, well, it's ridiculous.
Can you explain why you were allowed to dive when there weren't supposed to be any mission specialists on board?
Well, when I say no one was supposed to, the original mandate was that, okay, we've had an incident, we're going to go down and not take any mission specialists. It wasn't like some legal reality, because this was all operating in an experimental environment. I reminded Stockton that it was my intent to be on the first dive, and that I was comfortable getting in and was willing to accept that risk.
Can you tell me about this dive and why the dive was aborted?
We went down, it was PH Nargeolet, Stockton, Scott Griffith, and myself. So we were launched, and we, basically blew the air tanks and went down 30 meters, floated the Titan, and we began a descent. Now you have to remember, this is literally the first descent to depth, other than practice, descents in other locales. So we realized very early on that we had weighted the Titan slightly off balance. And the original intent was to go down nose forward and kind of go down on a long gradual angle. And we had unfortunately weighted it ass heavy, so it began spiraling. So instead of going down on a gradient, we were going through it wasn't a violent spiral, it was a very slow spiral through the ocean. And we descended through the shades of light until we entered a world of utter darkness, a complete absence of light, as you're aware. And during that descent, we would see various phosphorescent creatures in the inky blackness, and all systems were off except basically a couple LED lights and the little laptop that they were using to send text messages to the surface. So we basically free fell. I believe it was for 2.5 hours. I don't recall the exact timeline, but it was a few hours. And because we were spiraling slowly through the void, we were off course, and we were caught in the currents, and we were in this kind of unusual attitude. So when we were approaching the bottom of the seabed, we received a text message, and again, communications were very erratic. We would lose comms, which was not unusual because of the different, climactic zones in the ocean. It was hard to get signals, but it would come in and out. But we received a text message that we were off course. So at that juncture, we were all discussing all these things together jointly. We decided to throw the thrusters on and correct our course and make our way towards what we believed was the bow. Now you have to remember that the Titan only has a sonar that can go out about 100 yards. So when you're at the bottom, you're basically operating in the blind until you actually get within 100 yards of anything. So you could actually go down and completely miss the Titanic because it's such a vast area. So, but we were given a heading by the mothership, and we then threw on the port thruster, and when we fired the starboard thruster, it failed to activate. And as everyone in this board, I'm sure, is well aware, electronics, salt water, and extremely intense pressure, they're just not always they're not compatible at all. So the starboard thruster failed, and we realized that all we could do was spin around in circles, like making right turns. At this juncture, obviously we weren't going to be able to navigate to the Titanic, so the decision was made to jettison our weights. There were a number of weights. There were the sandbags that were attached. There were also the pipe weights. And the pipe weights were released mechanically by rocking the Titan back and forth. And we dropped, I believe, 3 of the 4. The 4th one got stuck, so we couldn't get it off. So it took us probably 20 minutes before we actually saw a perceptible rate of ascent that, other than maybe just a couple feet. And then we began ascending, and again, these are just very approximate timelines because I don't exactly remember, but I think it was 3.5 hours to come up to the surface, but it was quite a while. But we came up, we weren't making much time, so we left the port thruster on, and then we began making long spiraling turns, or just long turns to the right during the ascent. So I think we did speed up. So, and I don't remember how long it was. It seemed like a long time. But we got up and got back on the platform, and they filled the tanks. We came up, and then we had to tow it back to St. John for repairs. And the decision was made by Stockton not to put it back on the ship because of the damage that had been sustained on the previous time to take it on deck. So the decision was made to tow it at about 5 to 8 knots.
Since you paid to go to the Titanic, did you get reimbursed since you didn't make it to the Titanic?
No, I did not. I don't believe there was any provision to be reimbursed, but Stockton made it clear that if you did not get to the Titanic, you would get another opportunity. And eventually, and I can't say I was overjoyed that I went that year and didn't get to the Titanic, but as it turned out, I went back the next year, so I had 2 expeditions basically for the price of one. And you have to remember that this was all in the service of an experimental vessel. Stockton was not necessarily fascinated by the Titanic. What he was trying to do was create a paradigm where he could take people and resources into the abyss. And the Titanic served as this iconic destination that people would pay to go to and help him perfect his technology. I mean, that's really what this was about.
That marked the end of Mission 1 of the 2021 expedition, with 2 dives in total, neither reaching the Titanic. There would be 5 missions in total, with Mission 2's first dive, Dive 63, commencing on July 9th. Participating in the dive was Stockton Rush, as well as a co-pilot and Pt.2 Nargeolet. Progress was made as Titan made its first successful dive to the depth of the Titanic at 3,840 metres. Unfortunately, due to issues with location tracking, the crew were ultimately unable to find the Titanic wreck site. Then, another drop weight issue occurred, with the crew unable to release the weights, primarily due to the failure of electric motors. Despite efforts to resolve the issue through first repair and then by rocking the submersible, none of the weights released. Eventually, it became necessary to release the entire drop weight tray to allow the sub to begin ascending. The co-pilot also stated to the MBI that they had heard the sound of the snap of a ruler on a table, a sound Stockton Rush had previously described as the sound of carbon fibre cracking. This event was detected and recorded by Titan's acoustic emission sensors. In his testimony at the public hearing, Phil Brooks was questioned about Titan's real-time monitoring system, both the acoustic emission sensors and the hull strain gauges.
Can you describe the purpose of a real-time monitoring system?
So the purpose of the real-time monitoring system was that the pilot could assess the health of the hull as they descended, and if they saw a lot of AE activity, then they would drop the drop weights and surface. That was the designed intent of the real-time monitoring system. In addition to the AE data, there was also a strain data, and we had a real-time strain monitoring program as well, where the pilot could watch the levels of the strain gauges to see if there was movement in the strain gauges. And so that was part of the real-time monitoring as well, and a similar intent that they could abort the dive if things were not looking good.
Was this system the primary method for determining the health of the hull?
During a dive, yeah, the real-time monitoring system was the primary system. The plots were looked at after, in addition, to see if there was something that the real-time monitoring did not pick up. You know, they were running the sub and they were driving it, so they didn't have the ability to watch all 3 screens all the time. So that was the idea behind plotting and later analysis after the dive. At the end of the dive, they had to bring the sub up the ramp, and sometimes they would leave the acoustic monitoring left on. They would be busy with other things and leave it on. And so as it came up the ramp, it was a bumpy ride, and that caused a lot of acoustic activity just from the mechanical, shaking of the sub.
Was the real-time monitoring system only on or operational during dives?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, it was left off. Yeah, it was turned off when we were working on it, unless we were testing it. But they usually turned it on once they got underwater and started the dive, yes.
Was there an operational requirement for the number of acoustic sensors or strain gauges that needed to be working prior to each dive?
So there were some that I don't know if any of the acoustic sensors failed during the mission. But there were some that had electrical noise on them. And so I don't know of any that failed outright. All 8 of them were working, but some of them had some low levels of acoustic or of electrical noise. And so we tried to fix that, and sometimes it would come and go. It's possible it could have been a cell phone or some other noisy piece of electronics. That was my only recollection of acoustic sensors not working. For the strain, there were I believe three strain sensors that failed, that we could not get to, that they were under the insert. And so we had to dive with the remaining, 16. So I guess that would be 13 working strain sensors.
Were the sensors regularly replaced?
No, we once we glued them in and installed the insert, then we did not replace them. They were there for the life of Titan. So yeah.
And you had mentioned gauges and monitors in the hull. Do you employ monitoring and gauging within your submersibles?
During the testing phase, but not when they're being operated. You know, there's no reason, if you've designed a pressure boundary appropriately, there's no reason to have instrumentation in it to monitor its health. The expectation is that you've designed something where the health of the pressure boundary is an inherent part of the design.
Dive 64 commenced on July 13th and was a system test dive conducted in Witless Bay, Newfoundland. Titan dove to 89 metres and once again had issues deploying its drop weights. It was then discovered during this dive that the drop weight motors were running in reverse. This brought a close to Mission 2 of the expedition, with 2 dives in total. Still, OceanGate had yet to reach the famous shipwreck. Dive 65 marked the beginning of Mission 3. This time, Titan successfully located the Titanic wreck with a dive depth of 3,500 metres as stated in its dive log, with Stockton Rush piloting, accompanied by a co-pilot, a scientific researcher and 2 mission specialists. Once again, a problem with the drop weights meant that they could not be released, leaving Titan unable to ascend. The mission director, aboard the support ship the Horizon Arctic, ordered for the entire drop weight tray to be released, as had been done previously. Stockton Rush, however, wished for more time, preferring to wait for 24 hours until the squibs, a safeguard system in place, would discharge after that amount of time and trigger the release of the drop weights. The mission director testified to the Marine Board of Investigation that Stockton Rush addressed each of the other people inside Titan, saying to them, "Are you willing to stay down here for 24 hours? Because if you don't, the company's going out of business." This put pressure on the passengers and was also due to the fact that no more drop weight trays were available. After descending to the bottom, and with manual attempts by the crew, they were able to manipulate the drop weight's hydraulic pump and release just enough weight to begin returning to the surface. The co-pilot's communication with the support vessel from Titan can be seen here, saying, "Tell my wife what is going on tonight, buy me a plane ticket." After Mission 3 was completed and Horizon Arctic returned to St. John's, Newfoundland, the co-pilot departed the company and was not involved in any further dives. Mission 4 included 3 successful dives to the wreck of the Titanic between the 24th and 28th of July. On August 4th and 5th, Titan completed another 2 successful dives to the wreck site, which would bring both Mission 5 and the 2021 expedition to a close. Out of the 10 dives made, 6 of them reached the famous shipwreck. It must also be noted that Phil Brooks did not become the Director of Engineering until Dan Scoville, who oversaw operational engineering at the time of the 2021 expedition, as well as being listed online as Director of Systems Integration and Marine Operations, departed the company in late 2021. Prior to his appointment as Engineering Director, Phil Brooks was working at OceanGate as a software engineer. As the 2021 expedition came to a close, instead of being taken back to the OceanGate facility in Everett, Titan was put on the back of a flatbed truck, transported back to the United States, and taken on a 7-month roadshow to various locations.
Were you aware that the Titan was making a road trip across the country doing marketing and events at different...
Absolutely. I was part of the Titan Road event and show on the East Coast. I attended all of those events and supported the staff, the logistics of moving the staff, getting ahead of the sub when it was arriving, and working with our team to make certain it was an appropriate place to be displayed.
And what was the purpose of those events?
It was a twofold purpose. We were there to speak to friends and families of our mission specialists, give them a stage to speak to their experiences. It was also, we went to the University of Rhode Island to encourage young mariners and deep sea explorers and people in those sciences to see cutting edge technology and be excited about their role in their futures and inspire the young.
And throughout that trip, how was the Titan transported?
It was transported on a truck bed.
Was it in a container or was it just on the back of the truck?
It was on the back of a truck, and it was covered in whatever our operations thought was an appropriate cover so it wouldn't receive damage.
This roadshow with Titan meant that there would be a much shorter window of time to prepare the sub for the upcoming 2022 Titanic expedition, with a turnaround time stated in the US Coast Guard's final report as 8 weeks instead of 9 months. Once again, on the back of a flatbed truck, Titan was transported to Newfoundland for the 2022 expedition. After a shallow systems test dive in St. John's, logged as Dive 71, on June 18th, Dive 72 would begin the expedition's dives to the Titanic, with Titan's dive log stating too heavy by 100 to 200 pounds for Dive 72, only a depth of 1,380 metres was reached before returning to the surface. It is stated in the Coast Guard's final report that upon returning to the support vessel, which remained the Horizon Arctic for the 2022 expedition, Titan's launch and recovery platform suffered damage. Dive 73 was conducted 2 days later on June 20th and reached the Titanic wreck site. This would be the longest recorded dive in Titan, lasting a total of 27 hours due to adverse weather conditions upon resurfacing, which caused problems in getting Titan locked back on its launch and recovery platform. Despite efforts from divers to help the process, it was eventually decided to wait until the next morning for recovery. Once back on the deck of the Horizon Arctic, the damage Titan had suffered from the failed recovery was clear, including fairings that had been ripped off, damaged cameras and lights, and a portion of its buoyancy foam which had fallen off. After a short break in operations due to the damage Titan suffered, and after a shallow test dive on July 1st, the Titanic expedition resumed, with Dive 75 commencing on July 3rd. Despite Titan's dive log reporting a port battery drop and control program crash, the dive still reached the Titanic wreck site and was captured in a promotional video.
Does it feel real, like you're going to Titanic tomorrow?
It all felt a lot more real than it ever has when they're like, okay, Chelsea, you're dive team 1, you're going tomorrow. It was like, because this thing that you wait your whole life for, that you've been trying to do for 13 years, and then the day is like, it's tomorrow. It's a very overwhelming rush of emotion and excitement, and like, have all these years to prepare, and then it hits here and it all kind of sinks in. You're like, okay, don't forget this, don't forget that.
What's going through your head right now?
Happiness, joy, all the emotions. I didn't cry this much in the sub, but something about getting back on deck that's just really letting it flow. But it was more incredible than I ever imagined. It went by way too fast. And I can't wait to do it again one day.
Over Titan's next 4 dives, which included a shallow test dive in Witless Bay and a 10-metre dive in Cameron Canyon, the other 2 dives would successfully reach the Titanic. These 4 dives took place between the 6th and 14th of July.
We have discovered that oceans of water are common in our solar system. And I'm completely convinced that there will be a day when there are ocean explorers of Europa and Triton and Titan and Enceladus and Pluto and all those ocean worlds out there that are just built for this technology. You know, we're just learning that these ocean worlds are very common. But we were fooled because you look at their surfaces, you don't see any oceans. So the first conclusion was Earth's the only planet with an ocean in our solar system. Turns out that was just completely wrong. These ocean worlds are very common. There are at least a dozen known in our own solar system. And they go all the way outward to Pluto. Even Pluto has an ocean. And that ocean is liquid water, so it must be at similar temperatures. Different pressures, but similar temperatures. And it has an ocean bottom. The difference is it has a roof over it. Imagine something like the ocean beneath the Arctic ice. As a person that's been in spacecraft operations, seeing this other high-tech equivalent, it's very different but has parallels, was fascinating throughout the whole process. Yeah, I think it's a natural marriage. They're both real frontiers. They both involve specialized technologies. They are both, you know, romantically exciting, I think, in general to people. And they both are a scientific frontier as well. You know, at one level, the value of exploration is in teaching us new things scientifically and opening up new possibilities economically. But then there's the whole spiritual aspect to it and the personal achievement aspects to it. I think we're on a very fast ride now where exploration is going to open up new possibilities across the globe and across the cosmos for human beings. And I can't wait to see what the future brings.
According to the dive logs provided by OceanGate, you completed a successful Titanic wreck site dive on the Titan on July 15th, 2022, which we labeled as Dive 80. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Upon surfacing on Dive 80, a loud bang was heard. Do you recall witnessing that?
Do I recall hearing it?
Yes.
Yes, I certainly.
Can you please describe what you heard?
Well, we were ascending, and I don't recall the depth. I think we were fairly close to the surface, but we were still underwater, and there was just a large bang or cracking sound. And of course, sonic events in a submersible are alarming, so we were all concerned that maybe there was a crack in the hull. But it turned out, upon inspection after we got on the ship, that the body of the fuselage of the Titan had just jumped in its carriage. So there was no damage.
During the debrief, was this loud bang discussed by any OceanGate employees?
It must have been, but I really don't recall it. We went out and looked to see what had happened, and I think we determined what had happened. I'm sure it was, but I don't remember discussing it.
Prior to what you were told for the reason for the loud bang, were there any discussions about the possibilities for the loud bang?
Well, yeah, obviously the concern was that maybe the hull had cracked.
Do you know what investigation was done into the cause of the bang? What specifically was looked at?
Well, we physically determined that the fuselage had jumped in the carriage, so that was the logical inference, and there was no sign. I believe at some point, I was not present for the inspection, but I believe the fairings were removed and the hull was inspected, but we had already we had determined to reasonable degree of satisfaction that the hull had jumped in the carriage.
Do you know if anybody else on board voiced concerns about the noise you heard?
On board the Titan?
The Titan or the Horizon Arctic or any OceanGate employees?
Oh, I remember it was widely discussed, and so there was a level of concern. I wasn't all that concerned myself. I'd finished my dive, so I wasn't really that focused on it. So I apologize. I probably wasn't paying that much attention.
Would you have felt safe going down to depth again after that loud bang?
Well, that's an interesting question. Anyone that felt safe going to depths in the Titan was deluded or delusional. It was an experimental vessel. It was clear that it was dangerous. And anyone that wanted to go was either delusional if they thought it wasn't dangerous, or they were just embracing the sense of risk. It's kind of like jumping out of an airplane. You don't do it because it's safe. You do it because it's an adrenaline rush. And yeah, I would have gone back down again. That we weren't going down in search of safety. We were going down in search of adventure and exploration.
So at 9 a.m. in the debrief meeting on July 16th, 2022, we were going through the debrief, and one of the customers stated that on ascent, as they were getting fairly close to the surface, I don't know what depth they were actually at, but they heard a bang as loud as an explosion. I later spoke to some of the people who had been in the small boats helping with the launch and recovery, and one of them told me, I recall clearly, one of them told me they heard it from the surface. Stockton's response when the customer brought that up was to it seemed to me, immediately shut it down. I recall him saying, "We're not at the part of the debrief where we're discussing ascent and recovery, so we'll discuss it later." Later, we got back to it, and he, again, just sort of, I felt brushed it aside. He said, well, it was probably just the sled banging against the frame, and then, oh, well, deep sea vehicles just make lots of noise due to pressure changes. I just felt that it didn't seem like the customer's concerns were taken particularly seriously in that meeting. So following the debrief, I went to Amber Bay, the director of administration, to raise my concerns about what I had just heard. And I told her, I'm really concerned about what this customer has said, and that there was a bang as loud as an explosion. And I asked what's being done. And her response to that was that, yes, many people are concerned about you. You don't seem to have an explorer mindset. And I was kind of taken aback by that, because she didn't acknowledge what I had just said and asked, what was the procedure was, what was going to be done. And then so I pushed on it a little. She did tell me that the engineering team is having meetings. I was an engineering and operations tech, but I was a brand new independent contractor, so maybe I was definitely not involved in those meetings. And I continued pressing on it a little bit to kind of say that, reiterate that I felt this was quite concerning to hear this report, especially in the context of the haphazardness I'd seen in the rest of the operation. And everything I said, she sort of turned it back around on me and said, well, yeah, you have a bad attitude. You don't have an explorer mindset. We're innovative and we're cowboys, and a lot of people can't handle that.
We heard testimony from Ms. Wilby last week, a former OceanGate contractor, that stated when she tried to bring up several safety concerns to you regarding Dive 80 on July 16, 2022, she was told that she was causing trouble and did not have an explorer mindset. Can you explain to us what that means?
I don't believe that either one of those statements is exactly what I had said. Again, that was, my recollection may be wrong. And her concerns in general, she had actually told me she had been very sick for a month prior, had joined the ship and hadn't slept in 3 weeks, came aboard, and all her concerns were listened to and notated, but what she was specifically referencing, I don't have any knowledge of.
I went to Phil Brooks, the director of engineering, and I asked him if they had seen anything in the dive, like the strain gauge data or the acoustic emission data that corresponded with the customer's report of this loud explosion sound. And he said, well, Stockton and I looked at the data, and we did see movement in the hull in the strain gauge data. And despite not being, any sort of expert in composites, it also appeared that, like, I certainly am not an expert, but it didn't appear that anyone else aboard had specific expertise in composite materials, nor did anyone employed at OceanGate at the time seem to have any of this expertise. And so for me, I certainly wouldn't want to make that judgment call, but I would want someone with expertise in this particular material to be reviewing this data and determining what was a problem and what wasn't. And so I did bring up delamination to Phil as could that have been, something indicated in these data? And he said, well, it was only a few microns. And I asked if they were going to continue diving the sub or if they were going to stop the operations until they figured out really what had happened. And he said, well, we'll do the next 2 dives on mission 5, and then when it gets back to Seattle, we'll do a visual inspection.
As you described earlier, I just want to confirm the large acoustic emissions between 15 and 1600. Is that what we were talking about with the large acoustic emission?
Yes. Yes. The bang.
The bang?
Yep.
So again, between the time of 15 and 16, there is a large acoustic emission. Is this also consistent with the data that you had looked at?
Yep. Yeah, that is a full amplitude AE spike, correct.
So we haven't really talked about strain gauge data. So when you get there, I'm going to ask you just to explain what you see on the screen. Mr. Brooks, could you just please explain to us what the green line means and what the purple line means in front of you?
The green is the strain gauge in the axial direction, and the the green is in the radial direction, and the purple is in the axial direction, and then the blue line is depth.
So you're talking about the shift. So you see the shift in both the axial and the hoop direction.
Yep.
Had you ever seen a shift in the strain gauge data prior to this dive?
Not on the full-size hull, no.
This is for the Group 5 strain gauges. I'd like to bring your attention to the shift in axial strain between the 15 and 16 time. To confirm, you were aware of this at the time, and you had brought this concern to Stockton.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, we reviewed this in a lot of detail. These two strain plots were really the big part of what we went over after that issue. I know there were other people that were concerned about it. That there were people who were in the sub when it happened.
And in your opinion, was there anybody on board the Horizon Arctic at the time that was well-versed in strain gauge data and carbon fiber that could interpret this data?
Other than Stockton and myself, probably not.
Do you feel with your background that you were qualified to determine what a shift in strain gauge data meant?
Probably not, no. That really should be referred to an expert in it, somebody that had used strain gauges for a period of time.
After Dive 80 and the Loud Bang event, was there any discussion about reaching out to an external laboratory or contractor to maybe do a deeper dive on the stress strain and acoustic emission data?
No, there was not.
Every expedition has its challenges, all of them. I have not been in one expedition where things have to be adjusted, adapted, changed, or canceled at the end of the day. You're at the mercy of the weather.
Renata Rojas speaks from painful experience. Over the years, she's been booked on 3 Titanic expeditions. All 3 were canceled.
You just cry a lot and just keep the dream alive, because it's something that I have to do.
Before we move on to Dive 81, which would be the dive where Renata Rojas would finally have her dream come true, first, David Pogue was also present with CBS aboard the Horizon Arctic and was on Titan's most recent aborted dive to Cameron Canyon in the vicinity of the Titanic after his own dive to the famous shipwreck had been cancelled. Before his dive, as well as being given a tour of Titan's interior by Stockton Rush, As we saw in part 1, he was also given a look around the submersible's exterior by the OceanGate CEO.
Now we get to the business end. So the pressure vessel is, the key thing we've done with the pressure vessel is it's made of carbon fiber. So same kind of thing. The submersible industry, for as well as maritime, is sort of where aviation was 30 years ago as far as composites. So when I built my airplane, it was a fiberglass airplane, and people said you can't build an airplane out of that, but there were lots of them flying. FAA didn't approve it for a long time. But what it came out to be is you can use composites, they're just different. Manufacturing process is far more important. So right now, we use the same material that's used in the 787, and that's used for primary structure. So the fuselage, wing spars, things like that are made of carbon fiber, and FAA is comfortable with that because they manage the process from the manufacturing to the storage to the application to the curing, and if you control that, then carbon fiber is a great material. It's better than titanium, it's better than a lot of other materials. But if you don't, you can have a catastrophic failure where you can have imperfections in the structure that you wouldn't have in a metal. So the metal's homogeneous, the carbon fiber has these different fibers and resin, and so you really have to watch how you make it. Well, the logical question then is, if they weren't using carbon fiber for submersibles, and if one little crack could send you to your death, why did you use it? You don't need it to be light. It's not an airplane. You do, because, so the interesting thing is carbon fiber is 3 times better than titanium on strength to buoyancy. So when you're underwater, it's strength to buoyancy, not strength to weight.
Oh.
And so because we make it out of carbon fiber, all of a sudden my pressure vessel is lighter than the water to places, and it all works together. It is the best material is either glass or ceramic, but those are a little harder. Carbon fiber is right up there. So it's one of the best materials to make a sub out of. You just have to do it the right way.
So how many years old is this sub?
Well, we had to remake the carbon fiber hull one time because the last one wasn't as well manufactured as it should have been.
Oh, great.
And this dove for the first time we took it to the pressure chamber in 2021.
Okay.
The sub itself had its first launch in 2018. So you've got a carbon fiber cylinder, which is a difficult structure. We worked with Boeing, had a design contract with them. We went through a bunch of different designs on this. They had made a thing called the Deep Sea Glider, which was an autonomous vehicle to go to 6,000 meters. And we were going to do something to size it up a little bit. And we did a bunch of runs on this, and when they would analyze the hull, it took 24 hours on their supercomputer to analyze. They do every single fiber, millions of fibers, how do they respond? And doing a dome is a much harder shape. So in a cylinder, all your load is like this or like this. And so it makes it somewhat easier to analyze. When you're in a cylinder and you're trying to match the fibers, you've got different layup techniques. It's a bit of a challenge. So we made the domes out of titanium. So this is 3 1/4 inch thick titanium. It was forged out of a 7-inch thick slab of titanium. So a giant slab, get it super hot, smash it into a structure. We have, so here's the thruster. This is a drop weight mechanism. So we have, the key with a submersible for safety is make sure your pressure vessel doesn't collapse. That's rule one. Rule 2 is make sure you got lots of ways to get to the surface.
Yeah.
And so we have a number of ways. In a normal configuration, we have a little motor controller down there where we drop these bags of steel shot. They could be bags of anything. Typically we use this weight to get us to be neutral and to go up. We also have the thrusters, so the weight that's an electrical system. Then you have the thrusters, which is a different electrical system because it's run off those external motors.
It can push you up.
Okay. Then we have the bag, which also can give you some lift, which is sitting under here that has compressed air, and that's just valves. So it's a tank of air and it's valves, so it's completely pneumatic. Then we have our hydraulic system, so we can drop these weights. It's 100 pounds there, and there's a pump inside, and so we can pump it. So it's a completely independent hydraulic system. And then as an absolute last ditch, the entire landing gear, so right here it's just resting on it. That is all held in with 2 pins and a separate hydraulic cylinder, and we could pump and we could drop this entire piece. So you want to do that if you got entangled in something like a net or something went wrong. You want to, as I said, a lot of ways to get to the surface. Make sure you don't collapse.
How many backup systems do you have for the thing collapsing?
So the key on that one is we have an acoustic monitoring system. So typically engineers like to use strain gauges because they can match their calculations to the load of the structure. It doesn't work very well in carbon fiber, and because it's not homogeneous, you have different layers. All you're measuring is displacement to get the strain. What's far more valuable is acoustics, and so carbon fiber makes noise. You have millions of fibers. There's 667 layers of very thin carbon fiber in this 5-inch piece, and I'll show you a chunk of it.
Okay.
And what happens is it makes noise and it crackles. When the first time you pressurize it, if you think about it, of those million fibers, a couple of them are sort of weak. They shouldn't have made the team. And when it gets pressurized, they snap and they make a noise. And what you have is what's called the Kaiser effect. Is you take a cylinder like that and you pressurize it. The first time you get to say 1,000 meters, it'll make a whole bunch of noise. And then you back off and it won't make any noise when it used to, until you exceed the last maximum. And so when the first time we took it to full pressure, it made a bunch of noise. The second time it made very little noise. And so we actually monitor that all the time. We have 8 acoustic sensors in there, and they're listening for this. And we've destroyed several structures, and you get a lot of warning. I mean, 1,500 meters of warning. You'll look at it and go, oh, this isn't happy. And then you'll keep doing it, and then it explodes or implodes, and it's an amazing. We do it at the University of Washington. It shakes the whole building when you destroy the thing. So that's our backup for the hull, and that's in continuous monitoring. Makes a lot of sense in submersibles. Even more so, they do it now more in aircraft. Trying to predict engine failure, and you have a lot of sensors.
Right.
Submersibles, you have this perfect test vehicle. It's always the same conditions, and therefore your thing should respond the same every time. And we're the only people I know that use continuous monitoring of the hull.
What is left to worry about? What about the air? Could you?
I think what's left to worry about is the things people don't worry about, which is you're on a ship in the open ocean, getting in and out of a sub, and you've got to launch and recover it. You've got heavy lines. I worry more about people falling and having a head injury, breaking their arm, collarbone. Things. You're on a boat. That's the danger. The most dangerous thing is the boat.
You call that more dangerous than this?
Once I've sealed this, you've been sealed inside this. We have 4 days of life support. That is the safest place on planet Earth. The entire world could be destroyed. A nuclear bomb could take out the ship. And for 4 days, we're alive. At the end of 4 days, we're dead. But for 4 days, it's nothing. 100 million pounds of force. It is like we just put you in the world's safe. And it doesn't matter what happens outside. As long as you can scrub the carbon dioxide and add oxygen, you're going to be fine for a while.
Wow.
So, you climb in the sub, and you can't really hurt anything.
Yeah.
So take your shoes off, that's customary.
Okay.
Don't want that. You take your hat off, you take your personal flotation device off.
Wow.
And then hop on in.
I've seen pictures, never seen it in person. You took this guy off too?
Yeah, a little bit more comfortable.
Wow.
And deck, anybody on that frequency?
It's like a minivan.
Yeah, it's like the Suburban. It's a little bigger than you would think.
David Pogue explained how his Titanic dive was cancelled due to bad weather.
Our Titanic adventure would have to wait. But Stockton Rush offered our CBS crew a consolation dive to the continental shelf 80 miles away.
We're in the water, we're floating. Woo! They're going to come and prepare the platform for the next phase, which is the sinking.
The platform submerges to around 30 feet, where the water is much calmer than on the surface.
You're in the water, people.
Divers detach the sub from the platform, and away you go, in theory.
Hull integrity, holding.
And what happened next? Our dive in the OceanGate submersible had made it down only 37 feet when this happened.
So apparently those floats there came off the platform, and that wasn't supposed to happen, so we're
scrubbing?
Yeah, I think that's the consensus up here.
Copy that.
I was crushed. My diving adventures were over.
I was anticipating a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and I got it. OceanGate, the company, invited us from CBS Sunday Morning, cameraman, a producer, and me, to come aboard and, in theory, to document one of their dives to the Titanic, for which they were charging $250,000 per person. We didn't pay that. we were there to do a story. I was very, very, very excited, and then I saw the actual submersible. It's a one-of-a-kind. As Stockton Rush, the CEO and the inventor of the sub, puts it, every submersible is a prototype. In other words, there is no spare. There was no version 1.0 before 2.0. This is it. It's a one-of-a-kind. And as such, there were parts of it that seemed to me to be less sophisticated than I was guessing. You know, that you drive it with a PlayStation video controller, literally a Bluetooth wireless controller. Some of the ballasts are old rusty construction pipes. When they seal you in, and they do seal you in, by the way, with 18 bolts that seal you in from the outside, and they only do 17 of them because the 18th one is way up high, so they don't bother with it. So there were certain things that looked like cut corners, but Stockton made me aware that the part that we care about, where the people are, the pressure capsule, is very high-end, designed in conjunction with NASA, the University of Washington, carbon fiber, 5 inches thick, unassailable.
As stated in this interview with David Pogue, and is something he also touched upon again in a CBS article, part of his willingness to get into Titan was the implication that both NASA and Boeing perhaps played a larger part than they actually did in the creation of its hull. This would be something discussed in the Coast Guard's public hearing, that OceanGate often overstated their relationship with these companies, a practice that would continue into even 2023, with NASA objecting to some of OceanGate's advertising material, stating that NASA's involvement could have been seen as endorsement, which wasn't the case.
We partnered with aerospace experts at the University of Washington, NASA, and Boeing on the design of our hull.
Do you remember why NASA, why you refused OceanGate's request to use NASA in the media release that you referenced?
It was the language they were using was getting too close to us endorsing. So it was our folks had some heartburn with the endorsement level of it.
You want to see what's in the bottom of the ocean, the beauty of it. This is the best way to do it. It's wonderful. It's the best thing I've ever done.
According to the dive logs provided by OceanGate, you completed a successful Titanic wreckside dive on the Titan on July 19th, 2022 on dive 81. Is that correct?
Correct.
I'm going to kind of ask you to take us through that, explain that dive, but I want to read for the record. It states, thruster controls mapped incorrectly, flashing lights, port battery drop, sonar drop, 4K drop, 2KH stuck, 419 after touchdown on Tubbs.
Mm-hmm.
As a mission specialist in the Titan for this dive, can you explain from your perspective on that dive what those notes mean and what happened on that dive and kind of take us through that dive?
Checks were done the night before. I was there to make sure the pilot did the checks. Checks were done that morning. I was there present for the checks. The propellers were fine. Then we turned off not we, but the sub was turned off while we did the briefing. When we came back to get on board, etc., we went through all the checks, sub was turned on. And it was a surprise to all of us when we were taking off the platform that, I didn't even feel it, to be honest. It was a pilot who felt that there was something weird in his driving from the platform. At that point, we were already dropping, but he was texting back and forth to say, what was that? When we got to the bottom, we landed very gently. Our procedures are that you usually start dropping weight early to slow down. You watch out the luminescence in the window, which is great. And anyway, we get to the bottom to try to get neutral buoyancy, and as we start moving forward, we're not moving forward, we're turning. The sub is so big, you don't really spin. You're turning very slowly. But I think I described it on camera as, we're spinning. We're not spinning. We're moving very slowly, but it was obviously we're not going forward. So we sat down and discussed with the surface as best as possible with the comms, what do we do? In solutions that were discussed between all of us in the sub, was discussed, maybe we should turn, Alt Control Delete, but then that could have created some issues. So somebody suggested move the controller backwards, so one propeller goes forward and the other one was this way. If you do it the other way around, you go forward. Scott, who was our pilot, did wonderfully at that. We landed 300 meters away from the bow. We could already see debris when we landed. Questions inside the sub were like, you guys want to go up? What do you want to do? And we all said, we're going. We're very close. And we did a dive. We actually put the pilot in the front dome at some point because it was easier for him to drive and to see. So we all took turns in the window with him. We did a dive, usually 3 to 4 hours. Gave some time to the scientist on board to do what he needed to do with the science and take pictures and explain to us, all the corals. And then we came back up. Lights were flickering. Yes, they were flickering, but you could see. I did not notice any sonar drop. We found the wreck with sonar, so I don't know what that is. At the surface, the batteries did get low. You drive on the surface towards the boat, which drains a lot of the battery, but at that point, you're back. And as we were parking the sub in the platform, it lost the batteries, or the remaining battery life drained. And that's what they call a 419, which is the quick numbers to divers are already in the water in case that happens. And as soon as you do a 419 and you announce on the radio 419, the divers come in, and they had a system where they could pull the sub into position. It was done in like 5 minutes, very quickly, and then we got on the platform.
OceanGate conducted another successful dive to the Titanic wreck 3 days later on July 22nd. And after an exploration trip conducted while on the way back to St. John's, the 2022 expedition came to an end. 7 of that year's dives successfully reached the Titanic wreck site. As stated in the Coast Guard's final report, after the 2022 expedition, Titan and its equipment were stored in the parking lot of Bay Harvey Marine Base in St. John's, with no protection being placed over the sub to protect it from the elements.
My final sets of questions are related to the storage of the Titan between 2022 and 2023. Where was the Titan submersible stored during that time frame?
So it was stored on the dock in St. John's, next to where the Arctic Horizon was docked.
Did it ever move inside, or was it outside for the entire season?
We moved it inside in February of 2023. We did crane it to the Marine Institute and we put it into the ROV shop at that time.
Was any maintenance completed on the Titan hull between the expeditions of 2022 and 2023?
Not on the hull, no. That all of the work that we did, it was really mostly the work that I had done, and it was on software. It was on thruster software and other software, battery charging systems and that sort of thing, but not on the hull.
And Lieutenant Commander, just for the record, Mr. Brooks left in February of 2023, so I'm not sure he would know if anything happened after that point.
We were aware that the Titan was stored outdoors in the elements over the course of a winter cycle of thawing and freezing temperatures. Would that give you any concern, sir?
So if you have a carbon fiber composite pressure hull, part 2 of our rules has requirements for storage, storage of the raw materials as well as storage of the finished product. And what part 2 of our rules says is you have to store it in a controlled environment. It has to be well ventilated, away from the sunlight. The temperature has to be controlled between 60 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Humidity has to be controlled. You should not exceed 80% relative humidity. So the storage of the finished product should be in a controlled environment. You expose it to the elements, it can possibly cause degradation of the material, okay, which is, because this is a composite, it's little different from steels and titanium, which are a little more robust materials, and they can take a little more wear and tear. So, from our side, looking at our rule requirements, we recommend that carbon fiber composite hulls be stored under controlled conditions.
So my next question is going to only be related to the time that you were with OceanGate before you departed. Before you departed, was there any testing conducted on the hull between expeditions 2022 and 2023?
No.
My final question is, why did you depart OceanGate?
So the decision had been made to, and there were several things, but really the main thing was that the decision had been made to not use the Horizon Arctic, to use the Polar Prince, and to tow the sub behind the Polar Prince. And it would require, when we were on the ship in 2021 and 2022, there was constant work, almost 24/7, except when they were diving on the sub, some kind of maintenance or troubleshooting. And we worked very hard on trying to keep things as best we could. And so this would have required us to work on the platform either while it was being towed or while we were, we were anchored or in position. And the seas are, 1 to 5 meter seas, and the platform bobs up and down, and I just did not see that I could do that, or I did not feel right that other people who were working for me would be required to do that, and the reasons were, economic reasons, and I suggested that they not go, that it was just not a workable solution, and I said, I just, I did have another job offer, but I just did not think that I could do it. I could work on the sub, and it was just too dangerous. So that was really the primary reason. In addition, I don't know if you've heard that there were economic issues with the company asking us to forego getting paid for periods of time with the promise that they would get us caught up in paychecks, after the first of the year. They asked for volunteers, and I don't think anybody did it, but it was clear that the company was economically very stressed, and as a result, that they were making decisions and doing things that resulted in, I felt that the safety was just being compromised way too much. It just did not feel right, for them to be going. And like I said, I had suggested that they not go. And I was told that wasn't possible, that they had people that paid, and that they had to go through with it. So yeah, so that was the reason that I left, basically. Yeah.
Were you ever aware of a time that Mr. Rush put his own money into OceanGate Incorporated or OceanGate Expedition to fund missions or to keep employees paid?
Yes.
Can you kind of go into that? How many times, when?
How many times I'm uncertain, but there was a few times where OceanGate Inc. was going to have difficulty meeting payroll, and he increased his investment by making a deposit, and we were able to meet payroll.
Were any OceanGate employees ever asked to forego their paycheck or would be willing to get paid later?
Yes.
Can you kind of go into that? How many times and when?
It was one time. I believe it was the beginning of 2023. We were looking to make ends meet, and if we were able to defer our paychecks, there was an offer that Stockton had derived, I believe, with an attorney or whomever, that we could delay our paychecks and be paid a small amount of interest and recaptured at a specific time.
Can you go into why that occurred in 2023 and not the other years?
I believe the finances were just getting very tight at that time.
OceanGate Expeditions offers you the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to be a specially trained crew member safely diving to the Titanic wreckage site. Get ready for what Jules Verne could only imagine, a 12,500-foot journey to the bottom of the sea. It's the OceanGate Titanic experience, earning raves from those who've taken our unforgettable dives.
There's no other trip like this. Fewer people have been to Titanic than have been to space.
It's tougher to go to the bottom of the ocean than it is to the far side of the moon. So we saw things that maybe human eyes have never seen before.
Wow.
This is not a thrill ride for tourists. It's much more. It is an 8-day, one-of-a-kind experience. You will be trained as a mission specialist and record valuable findings.
A citizen scientist is also involved in the science. They are doing jobs that are essential to the scientific research, not just busy work. We are looking at the process of degradation at the site. We are trying to make a really good map of the site in its current state.
This is not tourism. You're contributing.
It's not a ride at Disney, you know. There's a lot of real risk involved, and there's a lot of challenges.
Every time you take to the sea, there's so many things that have to go right. All the electrical systems and navigation systems that have to check out. This is a very complex vehicle.
Titan topside, you are out at 130 meters. We are in position for the dive.
It's very well engineered and very safe, and the team is very focused on safety first.
The communication is really key, I think, knowing that they never lost communication.
Not 1 second of me experiencing anything from OceanGate have I ever felt unsafe.
As I pointed out on the bridge earlier, your safety plans all around the vessel.
All mission specialists get to dive down to the Titanic, but the full experience entails much more. It begins with boarding day in picturesque St. John's, Newfoundland. Mission specialists meet each other in the OceanGate team.
Everybody here instantly became family. And that's something that you take away for life.
Prep starts before dawn with initial safety checks, reviewing assignments and gearing up. Then comes the pre-launch briefing, followed by boarding the Titan. Inside the surface vessel is Command Central. There, OceanGate operatives and specialists not diving that day are guided by the mission director before countdown to launch.
Roger, platform ready to dive. Mission directors go for platform launch.
This was actually my very first time. That was the first time that I'd been inside a sub, and it was really kind of a wonderful experience.
And you are in the deep, but you don't feel it.
So it's your big day. It is my big day. How are you feeling? Very excited.
To softly land like that with just a little puff of debris was movie-like. It was sort of dramatic in front of me playing out, and it was breathtaking. So it's very emotional.
For mission specialists not aboard the Titan sub, there's a full calendar of things to do.
This looks fun.
Lectures, screenings, tours of the ship's vast resources, including the engine rooms and recovery apparatus. Maybe best of all are the one-on-ones with experts like Commander Paul-Henri Nargelet, leader of 30 dives to the Titanic wreck site. He and other world-class experts will be on all our missions to give you an unrivaled, up-close and personal OceanGate Titanic experience.
The sub, for me, it's very well done because it's simple. Generally, they have a lot of equipment and a lot of switch. And on this one, you don't have because you work with a screen and with a keyboard, and it's very easy to do that. You are not only a passenger seat and waiting that the time is running and just looking outside. You can do something inside. You can be really a member of the team, and that's great.
Even after a successful dive, there is much to be done. A key element is the debrief session led by the mission director and subsea pilot. Simultaneously, the OceanGate tech team does an extensive safety check for the next dive. Excitement, thrills, and adventure on the high seas.
I just loved every minute of it.
It has exceeded anything I thought it could ever be.
Titanic is the ultimate dream.
I mean, this is definitely probably one of the most unique, interesting things I've ever done. Even going to, I've been to Everest. But this is more unique.
This was a dream come true. But as I look back, this will no doubt be the best experience of my entire life.
Come join us on our next expedition. Don't miss the opportunity to be part of history. The OceanGate Titanic experience. There's truly nothing else like it.
After only 3 shallow system test dives, one of them unmanned and the other 2 only descending to 10 meters, weather conditions played their part in disrupting dives to the Titanic wreck site. And it would not be until June 12th that an exploration dive was conducted. Though planned as a Titanic dive, plans and location were changed to the Grand Banks. This dive would be Dive 87, and after their public hearing, the Marine Board of Investigation would go on to interview 2 mission specialists, a married couple who were in Titan during the dive.
Before we got on the ship, they told us that we had about a 50% chance of making it to the Titanic because of the weather. And one mission specialist backed out then because he only wanted to go to the Titanic. Since we just wanted to see the bottom of the ocean, I was like, well, let's still go. And then they always said that if the weather was terrible over the Titanic, they would try to stay within a day's voyage away if the weather got better. They just tried to keep the ship away from the really bad weather on the Titanic. No, I would say the propeller situation was...
That was the pain.
Oh, it was so bad.
And you said so bad?
Yeah, it was, I mean, imagine being a person who, is a paying passenger and you're being told that it's fine to tow it behind the ship. And then the first day you're steaming out, the rope is wrapped around the propeller and it's like, it just was kind of a circus there for a little bit.
Yeah.
People didn't know what to do and they're grabbing knives from the kitchen. And it definitely made me go, this seems like it was maybe a bad idea to tow it behind.
Yeah. I want to talk about Dive 87 in as much detail as possible.
They said, all right, let's start the dive. They flooded the platform, so it sank down to, I think it's about 30 feet underwater. And at that point, Stockton was checking the variable ballast system. And the way he was describing it was he's got a little joystick and it was like push it all the way to the left and something spools all the way one way, push it all the way to the right and it spools all the way the other way. And it was only spooling halfway. And he couldn't diagnose what was wrong from inside the sub. So we were communicating with the scuba divers that were outside the sub to check and see if they could see what was wrong, if something was just fouled or caught. and they couldn't figure it out. So eventually we made the determination that we should go back to the surface, see if we could figure out what the problem was. Hopefully it was something simple, and if so, then we would be able to continue the dive, and if not, then we would have to scrub the dive. When we were getting ready to come back to the surface, we were told to brace at the front of the sub. There's no seats or seat belts or anything, so we needed to be in a stable position. And the plan was to raise the back of the sub a little bit and then have it come up, on a tilt. And so we were braced at the front. One person had their feet in the dome, then a person behind them had their knees kind of against their back, and we were just like bracing like you would if you were in an airplane accident or something. And what happened instead was I think the back valves weren't actually closed, and so when they tried to put air in the back of the platform, it didn't do anything. The air just went straight out, and the operator did not stop and say, hey, something's wrong, let me get on the radio and let's figure out what's wrong. He said, all right, well, let me try the front one, and eventually just full throttle hit all of the levers, which caused the front of the platform to flood with air. And so we were all braced at the front, and instead it just shot back at easily a 45-degree angle, it felt like, and very quickly went to the surface, which caused us all to go tumbling. It was not a comfortable experience. The waves were causing the platform to go up and down, and the locking mechanism that holds the sub onto the platform isn't really designed to hold it at an angle. It's not, they're not expecting gravity to be pulling it one way off of the platform. And so it was not holding well. It started to, I don't know if it was starting to break free or what. Stockton was on the radio getting increasingly frustrated and upset that they had not managed to get the sub level again, and in the interim get it tied down. He was saying somebody needs to go get the motorcycle straps out of the shipping container and just like tie us down. We're gonna break free if somebody does not do something. He was getting quite frustrated, and the sub, because it was starting to detach from the platform, it would periodically lift away from the platform on a wave, and so you get a little bit of a sense of, all right, we're free floating now, and then it would come back down pretty hard on the platform. It was jarring every time it happened, so you'd feel when it started to float free, and you knew what was coming, and you'd kind of brace yourself, lift your back off the titanium dome so that you didn't hit back on again. I think during that time, the people that were originally the sort of scuba diver team, they were out there trying to get onto the platform, figure out how to tie the sub down. From our perspective, it seemed incredibly dangerous. I think we were able to see out the dome window. The rest of the people in the back couldn't really see what was going on, but we were looking out the window watching, and I was very worried that somebody was going to get crushed by the sub, that they were because they were trying to get on the platform. It's at an angle, it's slippery, the waves are causing it to go up and down, and the sub is periodically lifting off and then slamming back onto it. That was frightening. Eventually, they figured out that it was that the valves in the back were open, and they were able to close the valves, put air in the whole platform, leveled it, and then it was, wait for them to open the dome, get back in the dinghies, go back to the ship. And obviously at that point, the dive was done. We weren't gonna attempt to dive anymore that day.
Dive 87, it took 4 days of canceled dives before we actually had a diving day. So for 4 days, we would prepare to go diving the night before. They told us not to eat much food because we were going to be in the sub for, a long period of time. Then we'd wake up at 7, and then they'd be like, oh, the weather, we canceled it. Or, oh, we have to do mechanical work, we canceled it. And so that continued until the day where we actually were slated to dive.
Stockton was not happy at all with the person who'd been operating the platform, and made it very clear
Stockton was getting very, very frustrated that he had not been able to get a successful dive in.
The entire season.
The entire season. And Dan and I were sitting in we were in the lunchroom, weren't we?
Yeah.
And Stockton said, I'm going to get a dive in this year, even if it kills me. To which a person next to him who worked for OceanGate said, only if you do it safely. And he was like, ha, 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 ha. Yeah, only if I do it safely. But I could tell that Stockton was really frustrated. And then you could also see it on Dive 87 when we were inside the Titan and we had our accident. He was not happy.
Yeah. The comment was made in jest, but you could there was the emotion behind it. You could tell, like, the fact that there had not been a single successful mission that had a dive the entire year was really starting to weigh on him, and he just really wanted to get a dive in that was successful.
Yeah.
Literally in the last 10 minutes, not even, we're getting a new update from the Coast Guard. Right now, racing the clock to try to find this missing submersible. It's now disappeared after touring some wreckage from the Titanic. We've learned about it in only the last 24 hours.
With potentially just hours to go before the Titan's 5 passengers run out of oxygen, the Coast Guard says the sub lost contact on Sunday about an hour and 45 minutes into its dive.
Join me in part 3 for what I promise will be the final part of this documentary, where we will explore Dive 88 and we'll hear more from those who testified about the culture of the company, the corners that were cut, and what were ultimately determined as the contributing factors to Titan's implosion. We will also take a look at the evidence that was gathered and investigated, including media that was officially released, and, in turn, bring this OceanGate coverage to the current day.